Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Numbers chapter 6, we have a very special vow that people could make in which they would consecrate themselves to the Lord in a very special way. And there's basically three things that would play a part in this consecration. For one, they would abstain from anything that was grown from the vine, that is, anything that is produced from grapes. No wine, no grapes, no raisins, anything in connection to the grapes. They were not supposed to ingest and take into their bodies. They're also not supposed to cut their hair. It says in verse 5, no razor shall pass over his head. They let the hair grow on their head, because the hair that they had was the hair of dedication and of holiness. And then they were also not supposed to touch any person that was dead. They had to be very careful about not coming into contact with death. And so as we think about it as New Testament Christians, we might wonder, does this have any application to us? And I think that it does, because it really does impress on our hearts what holiness looks like. For one, as we present ourselves to the Lord and in holiness, the Lord has called us into consecration through the blood of Jesus Christ and our faith in Him. And as we live that out in our lives, there's these same aspects involved. For one, being careful of what goes into us. Not necessarily abstaining from grapes or grape juice, the Lord Himself instituted the Lord's Supper that included the fruit of the vine. But looking at it from a spiritual standpoint, we still should be very careful about what we bring into ourselves. That is, what do we allow to go into our hearts, what we allow to go into our minds, and safeguarding ourselves to not living a life merely for pleasure and self-indulgence, which could be symbolized by the wine and the grapes and the raisins. Secondly, we ought to let holiness grow out of our lives, as they would let the hair on their heads grow long because of the holiness of their hair. They were not to cut it off. So we should allow holiness to grow out of us. So while we're being careful about what's going into us, we also are very careful about letting holiness grow out of us in the way that we live. The hair could just symbolize, the outward life, how the life grows out of a person who has been consecrated. And certainly our lives should grow out of a consecration that we have made to the Lord. And not cutting that off, but letting it grow, letting holiness grow out of us. And then lastly, not coming into contact with death, being very careful not to allow ourselves to be contaminated with anything that would produce death in us and bring us into contact with death, which would include anything that is sinful, anything that is immoral, anything that's ungodly. These are things that can produce death. The wages of sin is death, Romans chapter 6 teaches us. And so we just be very careful in what we come into contact with on a day-to-day basis. The types of shows that we watch, the type of music we listen to, is it bringing us into contact with death, or is it bringing us into life? Just being very careful about those sorts of things. So we too, as New Testament Christians, can, in a sense, live out this Nazarite vow, not in a literal sense, but in a spiritual sense. As we are careful about what we take in, being very careful about allowing the holiness grow out, to grow out of us, and then also being careful about what we come into contact with on a day-to-day basis as we live in this world. So as we do our reading today, let's let it motivate us to a life of holiness, especially as we read Numbers chapter 6. So that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. I hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.